You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to dissect horror films, both old and new. We've been doing, as our local podcast listeners may be aware of, a rundown every so often of the best horror film of the particular year within the last decade. We are now at 2018. We're nearing the end. And we ran that podcast vote, put it out to our social platforms, and you guys voted. And the winner of that was Hereditary, which was one of those kind of little... I feel like this film was a bit of a potboiler kind of moment. There was a lot of energy and stuff stirred up. There were people claiming it was the best horror film since The Shining, and things like that. And you guys have voted for it to be number one. Whether or not we agree with you is part of the podcast, and we will delve into the plot line and dissect into...
Wind to the end, then you'll find out if we agree with you or not.
Yeah. Or maybe not. Who sees? But yeah, we will see. We'll get there. But before we do so, I'll introduce myself. I'm the host of the podcast. My name is Saul Muerte, and I'm joined for this particular podcast episode by Anthony Big Cheese Yee. Welcome aboard, Ant.
G'day. How you going, folks?
Good to have you on board, and I know you're one of the people that you and I actually both voted for different movies in the list that was given, and I should probably kind of run through that because it was a
problem with democracy. This is the inherent problem with democracy, right here.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, this is the thing. We put out a list of the vote, and I'll read through them now. So we had A Quiet Place in there, which I know.
Was that in there?
Yeah, that was in there.
I didn't see.
Yeah. I think you did.
Wait, I didn't scroll up. Yeah, it's in there under A. Sorry.
So I know you voted for that one, and my theory, and it's a great movie. My theory is that it may be too sci-fi, too popcorn. For the horror fans out there, maybe.
I found people focused on the minutia. Those who didn't like it didn't get it. Steve Curry.
Yeah.
Focused on the minutia of it too much. Of like, hang on, if they can do this, then why don't they just do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
But it wasn't. They weren't sort of truck-sized plot holes to me. They were stuff that if you wanted to be the filmmaker, you could defend those plot holes quite easily. The only one for me was like, why don't they live under one? Why don't they live near a waterfall? Was my thing. These creatures can hear noise and stuff. They should live near a waterfall. Yeah. That was the only one that made me go, huh. But they didn't focus on the concept that if you can't talk, which is what the film was, what we're setting it, then how do you communicate with someone who's trying to kill you? And the actual rest of it, the execution and everything else is brilliant. Like really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, I really enjoyed it. It's a good flick. But yeah, there we go. So didn't win out, but that's fine. And we also had Halloween in there, the 2018 kind of re-envisioned from the Blumhouse team.
You like that as well?
I like that too. It's a good movie. It still wasn't the one I voted for, but
no.
But I guess that's the point. Like, there's some good kind of solid contenders in this year. So
it was a good year.
It was a good year. So we had Hereditary, as you know, that's the winning vote. We had Insidious: The Last Key, which was the fourth installment from the Insidious franchise. Again, a Blumhouse film.
That was all right.
It was good. And from my point of view, it helped complete that story arc from the Liz Shay kind of, the psychic kind of character. But it was good from that point of view. As a standalone movie, maybe not so much, but I felt like for completionists, it was good. Now, this is the one I voted for, Mandy, which was the Nick Cage gone batshit crazy with some hallucinogenic kind of visuals that throw in the mix. For me, this was like the big boss on acid. And I loved it. I thought and I always come from something like where I want to be rewarded with something I've not seen before. And this really served to that. So, and that's why this one was definitely my front runner. It wasn't. I had to be in the mood sorry?
I had to be in the mood to see that one.
Yeah, you do. And you're right. Yeah. I would agree with that. And it is one of those movies you have to really be in the mood for to kind of go on that journey. I mean, I've got it on Blu-ray, and I don't think I've actually watched it yet. So that's a kind of, even though I love the movie, I know that it'll come a point where I'm going to go, I'm in the mood for that kind of stuff. So I'm going to stick that on. Okay, so then we have a French kind of rape revenge thriller called Revenge.
I thought you were going to say French revenge thriller. French revenge thriller.
The French revenge thriller. Yeah.
That was all right too. That's in the desert, right?
Yeah, I really like that one, and I thought the rape scene was actually kind of tastefully done. It wasn't too kind of in your face.
If such a thing can be tastefully done, yes.
Yes, exactly.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
And it was kind of insinuated more than or implied rather than we don't actually kind of see anything, which I know certain other films have gone down that road, and you and I are people that don't really warm to that kind of stuff. So. So I thought in this instance it was good, and the revenge kind of component was compelling and on the edge of your seat. It was good. Then we get Suspiria, which was the remake that kind of came out. Suspiria.
I saw that with you and Ben Skinner, but Ben Skinner was on his phone the whole time.
And yet he loved it, apparently.
Yeah. So he's in the scene. He's in it for the scene. He doesn't actually fucking watch films.
He doesn't watch these things.
I'm part of the podcast. I'm so cool.
I wasn't a fan. Like, as from a drama point of view, it was good, but from a horror point of view, no, not good.
Nah.
And then we have The Strangers Pray at Night, which was the sequel to The Strangers. This was kind of okay. Like, as far as like slasher thrillers go, there were some weak moments, but it was very popcorn, cheese on toast kind of fare. But I didn't mind that so much.
Like cheese on toast.
Yeah, cheese on toast is good every so often. Then we have Unsane, which was the Steven Soderbergh shot film entirely on iPhone. With
I think the correct term is insane.
No, it's Unsane.
Is it? Oh,
yeah. Apparently,
can I just say I never got the term undead.
Yeah.
Because it's the undead. I'm like, does that make them alive? As a kid, I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, but that's right. They are supposed to be dead, but they're not. So they're the undead.
So they're alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just say alive.
But they've died.
Look at they're zombies. They're alive. There, done. Okay, problem solved. Next question.
And then the last one was Upgrade, which I've still not seen.
Oh, I've yet to see that.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be amazing. Yeah,
yeah. Lee Winnell.
It's Winnell. Yeah, I like him as a storyteller. I like both him and Juan are very good. But I think Winnell gets underrated a bit as just how good a storyteller he is.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to his Invisible Man, which is coming out in 2020.
Yes, yes. That's all the trailer for that.
Promising.
I like Zoe Bartlett. I call her. She'll always be Zoe Bartlett to me. Zoe Bartlett, the handmaiden.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my mind's gone blank as to her name, but I know.
What's it? Elizabeth
Olsen? No.
Banks. Windsor? I don't know.
One of those. Fill in the blank.
We are we're experts in film, as you can tell by this.
Yeah, that's right. Totally mind blank. I can see it. Like, to me, she's Mad Men, but there we go.
She's Mad Men chick. Yeah, Elizabeth. She's Zoe Bartlett, handmaiden. That's a Mad Men. Yeah,
that's it. That's
Get
really
Out. Us.
Get out.
Also good at Us as well.
You guys voted for Hereditary, and we'll have that now.
Do you have a minimum number or maximum number of how many films you pick every year? Or just have to be 10 for this year?
I try and aim for 10. Yeah, I started off doing a bit more than that, but I think people felt overwhelmed. So I try and condense it to 10. Yeah.
And is it your top 10, or you go off box office sales, or you go off critics?
It's a bit of both. Yeah, like I kind of get I try and watch all of them. And
that helps. Yeah.
Get a kind of a feel for it, but I kind of get a consensus from what I've seen and the buzz. Because sometimes there are movies that I throw in there that I just go, I never really clicked with that, but I know it had success.
Right. Cool.
I mean, and this is kind of one of them. Hereditary. Like, I as I said, I wasn't a huge fan of it. That's not to say I don't like it. It's just I wasn't a huge fan. But like, it's
spoiler.
but it did get a good. It got a good. I mean, there are people that voted for it. And it's gotten good reviews. You go on a lot of any of these kind of movie review kind of rated shows, and then or websites. Sorry, then you can see for yourself that it's got a good following.
Mm.
And here's the thing, like with the what's it, Ari Aster, isn't it? The director. I should have looked that up. But he's this was his first kind of feature-length film. Ari Aster. And I but there was enough there about him in this film that made me want to go and see his follow-up, which his sophomore outing, which came out this year, called Midsummer. And I really like that film. Yeah. I actually think that film is a better film than this one.
Right.
So it kind of indicates to me that he's still going to be a director to kind of keep an eye on and watch.
Guy, I saw Dr. Sleep recently. And who made that? Flanagan.
Yeah.
And you're a big fan of his, aren't you?
A huge fan of Flanagan's. Yeah.
Because what else has he done? He's done.
Oh, right. So he did Absentia, Oculus.
Right. He's the Absentia guy, which Miles is a massive fan of.
Yeah.
It's fine.
He did Before I Wake. He did this. He did the Haunting of Hill House series.
Yes, that's why. Which is why the dad from Hill House is Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
It did make me think that's a really odd casting choice.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody with the right sort of makeup could look like Jack Nicholson, and he kind of did. But the thing that got me when I saw it was like, why isn't this working? It's the voice. Yeah. Jack's voice. Yeah. Jack's voice is unique. Which, clearly, because I can't do it. But, yeah. The Batman.
Yes, stop. Before you embarrass yourself.
Because they hinted at him for such a long time before you saw his face, and even then you don't really see his face much. They should have chosen an actor who could have done his voice. I think would have been cool. Even though you don't have to duplicate him exactly. I get it, but he was just that the guy who I grew up watching as a child actor for so long was like, that's a really odd choice to be Jack.
Yeah, but then he does, because he's been in a lot of Flanagan stuff, because he was also in Gerald's Game as well.
Yeah. That was the other big one.
Been used a lot. Cool. Yeah. So they should have
done as a cameo for Jack.
Yeah.
Without crediting it should have been Jim Carrey.
No, but he's so Jim Carrey.
But the thing is, because they've done a deep fake recently of Jim Carrey being Jack in The Shining. They've deep faked him. Yeah. It's so good. And he has the energy of Jack being angry and stuff. So anyway. Just anything we do to avoid talking about Hereditary. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's get into Hereditary. So here's the thing. So I'm going to preface this by, look, before it came, because in Australia, from a memory of that it came out a little bit after the rest of the world. Yeah. So we were already getting a lot of the buzz. And the hype around it. And as I said, everyone kind of saying it's the scariest thing since The Shining, and a lot of proclamations. And I always get my back up with that stuff anyway. So I was coming into the movie kind of going, all right. And I think a lot of people did this because it was so overhyped. I think a lot of people went, like particularly horror fans, went in going, all right, let me see what you
scare us.
Yeah.
You can't see this, kids at home, but Paul's like, this is what he was like when he saw the movie. He sat there and he was arms folded and he was like, face the whole time.
Go on then.
Not fucking scary. Yeah, that was what Saw was like.
And that's the problem, because it's not a scary film, right?
No, it's not. It's a fucking mindfuck.
It's not meant to be scary. Yeah, that's right. And so my thing is that I think the distribution house kind of sold this to the wrong audience a little bit.
Marketing, you mean the marketing people, like, this is our angle, and you think,
going, so
can I just say something here? And then,
because even the trailer makes it out that there's something to do with the daughter being possessed or something, right?
Yeah,
she's never possessed.
She's never in the film, really.
No, and that was the big shock for me, and we'll probably get to that in a sec.
Yeah,
when that happened, I'm like, oh, okay. Right. So I came
Don't lose your head over it.
Yeah. Hey, whoa.
Hey.
So
Just a
yeah,
little bit
look,
off the top.
I was left a little bit miffed with it, and I also found the ending a bit over the top and predictable. Having said that,
A little Wicker Man for me. The end.
but I love the Wicker Man, right?
You know, but I don't.
And I like films about the occult too. It's probably like second to psychological horror. Probably is my go-to. I will gladly watch an occult film, even a shit occult film. I will watch. But that's what I mean. I just found the ending a bit. It fell into predictable territory, and this is why I feel Midsummer is a better film. From a narrative point of view, I felt like he's learned a few things as a director, and you can see.
Let's get to the plot of Hereditary. All right, here we go. Throughout the first 3 months of 2020, most of Earth's human and animal populations have been annihilated by sightless extraterrestrials.
No.
The creatures attack anything that makes respects hypersensitive hearing. Fine, you're right. Okay, here we go. This is Hereditary. Okay. The Abbott family, wife Evelyn, husband Lee, congenitally deaf daughter Regan, and sons Marcus and Beau.
Excuse me.
We're taking questions at the end of the podcast.
We are not doing A Quiet Place.
Okay.
We've been overruled, man. The people have spoken. We're going to do Hereditary.
Again, problem with democracy. We all could learn from Trump. I'm just saying. All learn from America.
Yeah. All right.
Speaking of which, do you think most Americans voted in this thing?
Yeah. Yeah, most of our followers are from America, actually. So, yeah, I do think that. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. There's a whole load of backstory to Hereditary that we don't we're not really told. It's kind of underlying, but if I can slip it in at relevant places, I'll try to. If not, I'll just kind of compile it at the end and kind of say, well, this is meant to have happened and blah, blah, blah. Yeah,
it's always strange when you come into a movie where there's a lot of backstory and you're supposed to piece it together through dialogue, and you're like, to the point where it's so dense, you're like, did I miss a prequel to this?
And that's what I meant by like on the second viewing of this film, I did appreciate it a lot more because I kind of understood what was going on a little bit more, particularly with the cult and everything. So I kind of went, okay. But we do open up with the caption, and we learn that the matriarchal kind of figure has passed away, their grandmother. And we're told, and I've got the thing here, it says Ellen Taper Lee, 78, passed away a prolonged illness at her daughter Annie's house on April 3rd, 2018. The key thing there, prolonged illness. So she's obviously been sick for a long time. Beloved wife of the late Martin Lee, R.I.P., devoted, and that's important that their fathers died, devoted mother of Annie Lee Graham, and the late Charles Lee, who is her brother, who also died, which is also important with backstory, which I'll come to at some point. Cherished grandmother of Peter Graham and Charlie Graham. So that's the
two kids.
The two kids. She is also survived by her son-in-law, Dr. Stephen Graham, Gabrielle Byrne, in this instance. She will be missed. Reposing at Kingston Funeral Home, Friday, 10 a.m., 12 p.m. Funeral service to be held on Saturday, 10 a.m. Burial will take place at Spring Blossom Cemetery. So we're given that as our kind of opening titles, essentially. And then that's when we are presented with our lead character, which is Annie, played by Toni Collette. And she's really good in this, I've got to say. She's
Australian.
Australian, isn't she?
Australian, mate.
Australian.
Muriel.
She's really, really good in this. I really have to stress that. And she kind of she's got this kind of not a soliloquy. It is a soliloquy, but she's what is it? When you're asked to speak.
Eulogy.
Yeah, thank you. Eulogy. Man, my mind went blank. That's a good start. So yeah, she has this eulogy at the beginning, and so this is where she talks about her a little bit about her father, and there are hints of mental illness in the family, but we later learn that it's not necessarily that. It was more kind of like a gaslighting, and the fact that this grandmother figure was in league with a satanic cult and was trying to manipulate certain things, which kind of was a lot of the other members of the family were unaware of what was going on, essentially, and it played on their mind, and so much so that they kind of questioned their own sanity, and then we get an essence of that with Annie's character as we unfold.
Yeah, she's a bit conflicted. You get the sense of of the mother's passing, and the family is a little. Well, which family is normal, to be honest? But because it permeates how they behave, permeates how she communicates to her kids, permeates her relationship with her husband.
Yes,
because he seems to be the guy that's trying to keep things together.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because he's later informed that Ellen's grave's been desecrated, and he kind of keeps it secret from her, from memory.
Yeah, that's right. And what we actually learn on that as well, in case we forget to mention it later on, is that the grave has actually been dug up and grandmother's body has been removed. And
I guess that qualifies for desecration.
Yeah.
Did somebody take that body out?
Yeah.
Oh, shit, somebody's stolen her body.
Oh, I can't believe it.
Just cover it up, bro. Just cover it up.
Just put the dirt back in. No one will know. All right.
Yeah.
Let's. We do need to kind of address Charlie. So she's the young daughter. So a lot of people, as I said, thought she was possessed, but she's not. At this point, she is not possessed. She has. She's just a bit quirky and a bit kind of. She's supposed to be 13 years old, something like that.
13.
Yeah.
Comes across as a bit younger.
Yeah, she does. And has allergies.
Oh, right. Is she I thought she was mentally disabled, but is that not right? Or
it's not really ever implied that that's definitely the case, but I think she's definitely got learning disabilities of some kind. Right? Mm. So it's never really I guess that's not really the point. It's just that she is an easy target. She's had a bit of a weird upbringing. It's later revealed that the grandmother breastfed her rather than the mum. Insistence. So there is kind of there's a weird kind of stuff going on, which may or may not have impacted on her own upbringing, and maybe that's why she's reserved and quirky as well. But I guess the important thing is that she has this nut allergy, and we get that at the beginning at the wake of the grandmother's wake, where the father kind of says she's eating chocolate, and he says to her, "There's no nuts in that." And she says no, and then when Toni Collette comes in, she reiterates it. She says, "There's no nuts in there, is there? Because we don't have the pen." So sowing the seeds early.
That's important. Yes.
Yeah. We at some point have a point where Annie is going through the boxes and stuff. I can't remember what point this happens, but she's going through boxes and she sees a letter from her from Grandma Lee, which is addressed for her, and it says, "My darling, dear, beautiful Annie, forgive me all the things I could not tell you. Please don't hate me and try not to despair your losses. You will see in the end that they were worth it. Our sacrifice will pale next to the rewards. Love, Mummy." Which is a bit of an odd thing to write to your daughter. All that kind of comes, and I'm just laying that down as the seeds as well early on. So we have the funeral scene. We come back to the house. We see Annie working on this art installation kind of project, which is like this miniature kind of houses and things that represent.
She's an expert. Yeah, she makes miniatures. That's a job, right?
Yeah, but it's they're for art. It's definitely for an art thing, because there's a art, some kind of art place. Oh my god, my mind keeps
installation.
Yeah, but there's an actual place that houses art installations. Gallery. Yay! Oh god, I'm on fire.
You're crushing it today.
I'm on fire. A bit like Gabriel Byrne. Ooh, spoilers. So look, what was I saying? So look, she does those for these galleries, and essentially, so at the moment she's working on this artwork, and it's these miniatures, and they represent pivotal moments in her life. And in doing that, we get a window into her life too, because we kind of see these odd little scenes.
And there's a weird ghost moment when she goes into the room or something.
Yeah, so that's what I was about to say. So Yeah, so she sees, as she goes to leave to go to bed, she sees an apparition of her mum in the corner of the room when she's turned the light off. When she turns it back on, no one there.
Lights out.
Lights out. Ooh.
No,
And
I remember thinking that was kind of well done, and I thought, oh, this could be kind of a decent sort of horror thing.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be more conventional horror at this point.
yes, same. I was thinking the same thing at this point too. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, something quirky about grandma, and it's going to lead to. So look, the key thing is that this is indicating that there's some kind of weird stuff that's about to lay effect. This is our first moment where we're presented with something that's of a supernatural bent when this happens, and we don't know whether or not is it supernatural or is this part of what's going on in her
mind. Yeah.
And even when she goes to bed, she says to the husband, like, I just scared myself in the study or wherever it is she does her miniature things, and he kind of goes to listen, but she doesn't offer anything, and he just goes no, and she just shakes her head as it like to shake it off, sort of thing.
Shake it off.
We also have like moments where there are these weird writings on the wall as well. I don't know, like where like there's little word, and we see it in the Charlie's room where there's like this a word that's written up there. What we later find out down the track is that these are like invocations or that are written around, and they're ways to ready the house, if you will, to invoke this demon called Paimon. And I'll talk a bit more about Paimon down the track too, because he's a real figure, which I found really interesting. I read a bit about him. So there are these kind of things that are kind of, we only see some of them along the way. We get the call from the cemetery, which is the bit that you were talking about with the desecration. And then we get Annie going to the support group for the first time for people that have lost their loved ones.
Yeah.
It's unknown, but I was trying to scan this to see if Joni, the Joni character, which we will talk about a bit later on, whether she was in that room at the time. I was trying to see if she was or not, but I couldn't see her. But that may have been a deliberate choice not to do that. But she's there, and this is where she talks about how she's afraid that she might be becoming a bit mentally sick too.
Yes.
And offers some of the things. She mentions about her dad dying. Oh, that's right. He died from starvation, is what she says, from a psychotic depression. It's probably like, it's kind of implied that there's more to that than that, and like hinted at a bit later on that it was potentially because of he did that because of what grandma was doing, and that the brother committed suicide. Again, it's hinted at this stage that it was because of mental issues, but a bit kind of implied deeper underneath that he did this. He left a suicide note blaming the mum, the grandmother, of putting people inside him. So again, hinting that she had plans of trying to resurrect this kind of demon character called Paimon using her son, and that kind of didn't work. And so the family, it's also learned that the family put on a bit of a block on grandma to not let her visit after Peter was born, and they only lift that block. They stopped her from coming to see her. They only lift that when Charlie was born, so when Peter was a bit older. No explanation of why they
why did they do that for? So she'll just try to keep stuffing people into Peter.
Yeah, god damn it. So anyway, so that kind of meant that grandma came back and started trying to get her taps into Charlie, the daughter, instead. Cool. So all that's kind of a little bit like to unpack there. Then we get another little bit of an indication of things to come when we have Charlie at school, and she's kind of fiddling with some kind of toy thing, which turns out to be like a bit of a figurine thing that she's making. And then all of a sudden a pigeon flies into the window of the school, and then Charlie then she grabs some scissors later on, goes out and cuts the pigeon's head off. Now, the decapitation thing is an ongoing theme, which I will then talk about at the end as well. But she kind of uses the pigeon's head with a crown on it and puts it on her little sculpture thing that she's kind of made.
That's a nice touch.
Yeah. We also, because we are following Charlie a lot at this point too.
So we think she's central to the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. We kind of led to, the story is going to be around this character. She's in her room. She sees the light kind of passing through. This light is actually the presence of Paimon, the demon.
Because this is interesting. Because I remember when we did the ages ago a haunted house tour podcast. At some point, you saw light running across the room. You thought during that room that was with the nurse in it.
Are we talking Q Station?
Yeah, Q Station.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I did. Yeah.
And it's interesting, how a light is associated with a spirit or something.
Well, they often talk about. There's arguments about this when people capture orbs on photography, and a lot of people say these are just dust particles. And all that stuff. But when you kind of see something a bit weird like that in person, interesting. But the key thing of this is the moment. So up to this point, what we have seen of Charlie has just been Charlie. This point on, she's under the control of Paimon.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that.
No, I didn't get that too. It was only through reading. So this is where, because Paimon has temporarily taken control of Charlie when she goes outside in that kind of trance thing and sees Grandma Lee sitting with a ring of fire around her.
Right.
So this is kind of all Paimon. Charlie's now kind of, the body is kind of under control of Paimon. Not completely, don't get me wrong, she's not completely under, but this is showing to us that he has control of her and can manipulate her accordingly. It kind of gets a bit more... this bit makes a bit more sense when you get to the point where Peter comes involved. Then we get... So we're about half an hour in, okay? So she's gone outside, as I said, at this point. Annie grabs her in because she's walking around barefoot. And there's a moment where Peter's saying that he wants to go out for this kind of, he says a barbecue, but it's where he's going to get drunk. He's not actually into drinking. He's more into some of the old wacky backy, and he's also interested in a particular girl that's going. So he really wants to go, and Annie basically kind of makes Charlie go with him, even though Charlie doesn't want to go, and Charlie suffering from social anxiety, among other things. So she goes along with Peter to this party.
Eats a cake.
And then she eats a cake. Basically, Peter, he was trying to fob her off because he's gotten this opportunity to go to hang out with this girl and some guys and smoke some weed. And obviously Charlie's hanging on, so he kind of fobs her off because he knows he likes chocolate. But unfortunately, the cake contains nuts.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
It wasn't M&Ms. It was peanut M&Ms in the cake. What a thing.
Well, we actually see again the precursors of that as the background earlier on in that scene. We see people chopping up walnuts in the background. So yeah, we know that. That's what I'm saying. There are things that are the later scenes that kind of make this clearer than it is. So she eats the cake and then she slowly starts to struggle to breathe. She comes to find Peter, who's doped out to the eyeballs, and says, "It feels like my throat's closing." Peter, and you really feel bad for Peter, It's yes, he's under the influence, but he switches on straight away. And yes, unfortunately, he doesn't have the EpiPen again. You'd think you'd take that with you.
If you go outside, particularly for periods of time where, therefore, you're going to consume food for fuel.
Yes, that's it.
You would take an EpiPen just as standard. It's your wallet, your keys, and your phone. EpiPen. You just have a full thing you always take.
Just do it. Anyway, more full then.
So she's in an anaphylactic shock.
Yeah. And so he grabs her in the car, drives off, and he starts speeding down the road.
And she, as you do, she can't breathe. Tries to literally, he winds down the window and sticks her head out the window because he's trying to get air into her lungs.
Yeah.
It's always weird. You did that as a kid, not stick your head out the window, but like in the back of the car, wind the window down and let wind just rush into your mouth.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
It feels like you're drowning, but you're not.
I've got this thing about wind.
Yeah.
I've gone to see the doctor. No, I think of all the elements, I'm kind of drawn to air, and I can't, like, when I'm driving in a car, I can't be in a stuffy car. I need airflow, and like obviously aircon does that, but sometimes I need that natural wind feel. So yes, I used to do that a lot. Yes,
you're an air sign. Oh, there you go.
I am. So she sticks her head out the window, and all of a sudden, there's some kind of dead animal in the middle of the road.
Yes, which he swerves to avoid.
Peter swerves to avoid, spins off, and just coincides with this pole, which decapitates Charlie, killing her.
Man.
And he's in a massive state of shock, which you
Yeah.
and the timing of it all. So, but before I go to the next kind of impact of that, obviously the pigeon thing foreshadowed that with her head being decapitated and stuff. So another instance of decapitation happening. But before we get to like the next bit, I just want to mention something. So on the way to the party, we see the car drive past this pole.
Yes.
And it stops on that, like the car goes past, like we're following the car, but it stops on the pole and the car continues. Yeah. On that pole is a symbol which represents King Paimon.
All right.
Which to me is kind of a nice touch, because it's kind of like going, like, this is an indicator of like Paimon being in control. This pole is going to be significant, and he's in control of events that are going to transpire and lead up to this moment in time. But this is why I said at the beginning, it does heavily rely on the suspension of disbelief in order for you to go, yeah, that's feasible. And you just got to kind of ride with it. But I do like that moment. And I wasn't aware of that until I'm going to mention him in case he's listening, because he's a new listener. And it's through I'm going to say that again. It's through a friend's son who really loves horror films, and his name's Max. She said, apparently he had said to me, did I know about that? And I didn't. And so when I watched it this time round, I was looking for it, and I went, oh, fuck. Yeah, there it is. So I didn't even notice it was on there until that was mentioned to me. But yeah, cool. Maybe not. So then Peter goes.
This whole bit,
go on.
This whole bit's really quite. Yeah, it's shocking, horrific.
Really, it's horrific as well as horrific.
It's quite horrific. But it's weird how the universe syncs up shit.
Yeah,
we've been talking about this. Last time we had a podcast, we talked about the shock factor of killing a kid.
Yes.
Which is a go-to area.
Yes.
And it was like the first film that we knew about it was Precinct 13, the original one.
Yeah. I saw on Precinct 13.
And that was decades ago.
Yeah.
And that's what made that film stand out. And no other film has sort of done that, not really.
Yeah.
And then we got this film where they decapitated a kid. We just talked about Dr. Sleep, which we've both seen recently, where they
that's right,
like torture porn a kid.
Yeah.
And there's another one. Oh yeah, A Quiet Place, where an alien kills a kid in the first few minutes of the film.
But we don't see that, though, do we?
No, we don't. But it is a shock thing, because
it is a shock thing. You're right. Yeah.
Which is like a land shark.
Bring in another film that I watched recently, which was Ready or Not. The two kids in that get killed at the spoilers. Get killed at the end, and we don't actually see them. We just see the blood blow up.
No,
part of it.
But that's it. I think it's more killing the kids, or seeing the kid get killed. Yeah, but with her, the kid that gets decapitated, you do eventually see the head.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, because the kid. That is very powerful stuff. Because the kid, Peter drives back home.
Yeah,
and then gets out of the car, closes the car, and just decides to go to bed. Because what else are you gonna fucking do? You just decapitate your sister.
The guy's in such shock. Yeah, that's right.
Such shock, and he's stoned, so he's not 100%.
No, that's right. And I really love the fact that we stay on him too. We hear the parents getting up, and we hear Annie going, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to go off to work."
Yeah.
You know, and and actually, just before as he goes to bed, when he comes home, you actually hear Annie say to the husband, she goes, "Oh, they're home," and you hear him say, "Oh, good." But they've obviously been listening out for him. But
as you do.
Yeah. So anyway, so we again hear the audio in the morning when they get up, and we're just focused on his face, and the hero go downstairs, and just the wailing. And this is and we see that also afterwards when she's on the floor, kind of crouched in fetal position, and the husband's trying to soothe her through it all, and she's just the wailing of despair and grief. And this is obviously something that Ari Aster is interested in, because it does come up in Midsummer. There's a very early on, so there's no spoilers. Early on, there is a scene where there is also a character going through a heavy amount of grief, and she wails. So it's interesting. I just find that as a common thread that might be interesting to see if grief is a common factor in the movie.
It's an intense thing to direct anybody, and it's an intense thing for an actor to go through.
Yeah.
Right. I remember Final Destination 2. Remember those movies? There's one bit. Final Destination 2 is actually surprisingly good in some areas. Like the big tragedy that sets off the beginning of that film, because it's always an accident that kills a bunch of people.
Yeah, that's right.
Would have if one of them didn't have a premonition. And this one was a big part, which they shot for real as best as possible. So it's really quite a spectacular Michael Bay-ish type car accident that piles up and kills a bunch of people. Yeah. And then the reality is they don't die like they should have, so therefore death comes after each one of them.
Yes.
Two of the people that death comes after is a mother and a son. And the son's about 16, and the mum's a Canadian actress. And the way they kill the son is because the son should have died first, so the son dies before the mother. So the way death kills the son is that he drops a great big glass sheet from a building that's been constructed.
Oh, yeah, it's that one. Yeah.
Pancakes him right in front of her eyes.
Yeah.
And she's like, what the fuck? And she knows she's next anyway. And then there's an elevator scene. It's at this particular point the entire group believes, and they all catch up, that this is a real thing, because I think the son was the third victim to die.
Right.
And so the plan is they all give each other mobile phones to stay in touch with each other. If they see anything, they develop some sort of buddy system. And so they all split up. And the mother goes back in the elevator with one of the other characters and goes down the lift, and she's in shock.
Yes.
And the son died. And then the DVD commentary said that this woman's a Canadian actress, amazing actress, and the first take, she's just like devastated, wailing, just in horror. And they're like, and they had to ask her to turn it down. It was too much. It was too much for this horror film. It was like, because it's a schlock horror film. It's all about the shtick, right?
Yeah.
So she's more, and the actual take you see in the elevator, she's just still, very much in shock, not really listening. But the first take, she was just broken, because she's a serious actress, right? And they're like, she was too good. They literally said, you're too good. You think, okay, your son died. Jeez,
you realise it's not that good a film.
Because she said, that was the direction. Your son's just died. What do you do? So she fucking, she wailed. She lost it. Yeah. And they're like, oh, that's a downer. Yeah, sorry. Can you just dial that back a bit? So I'm thinking of that. Because I remember when I was a kid, I think I was a kid, I saw it like 30s or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's full on. Like, why is she... I get that she's in shock, but shouldn't she be a bit more if her son is like, that's that thing of like, There's how you behave in real life if you're being chased by a guy with a chainsaw and a hockey mask.
Yes.
Or how you react in the movie Gold. It's a bit.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
But
I guess that's what makes this film does stand out with some people.
Yeah.
Why it's Kubrick-esque in that they decided, well, what if a woman found out her mother was decapitated, her daughter was decapitated?
Yes.
How will you react?
Yeah,
Toni Collette is the sort of actress who can pull it off.
Brings it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's what I meant. Like, I think this movie is definitely better than I gave it credit for. And I will kind of slightly go. I mean, there are points that I still disagree with, but I do think it warrants more than the one viewing, and I think I appreciate it more for watching the second time round. And these moments are exactly why I was just like, yeah, that's a pretty harrowing moment. I remember it being harrowing, and when I first watched it, but I appreciated the aftermath more, I guess. So, and that moment basically concludes the end of the first act, really. From there on in, this is where the cult kind of start getting their paws in, if you will, and we meet Joan, who, as it turns out, is the second in charge of this cult. So obviously the one in charge was Grandma.
2IC.
Yeah, 2IC. She's like, I'm here. I'm back with a brand new mission. Oh no, that's Vanilla Ice. And yeah, so we're introduced to her. So we don't, at this stage, we aren't aware that she is part of the cult. And as much as I do like, her name's Anne Dowd, the lady that plays Joan. I do like her as an actress, but I felt there are moments in this where she was really over the top and not believable because of that.
Well, she comes across initially as a sympathetic good guy.
Yeah, and that bit was fine. It's just when the tables start turning a bit. It's when she meets her again at the outside, the arts and crafts place.
Yeah, right.
And she kind of does that whole milking things on, and I just kind of went. I remember when I was watching it the first time, going, and then when I rewatched it this time, I went, oh, it really feels really false. And I don't know whether that's because it's false.
Yeah. But I think it's it's a kind of the point, isn't it? Like, it's interesting giving an actor like, you're being sincere in your sympathy to somebody. Now be sincere, but with an ulterior motive. It's that level of, the difference is just acting in the eyes, and then you're smiling without smiling around the eyes. Some actors nail it, some actors don't. So, it's interesting. Now she's the bad woman in Handmaid's Tale, right?
Is she? Right.
She's the
I still haven't seen that, by the way. But
okay. Just started watching it.
Want to see it?
Fuck, it's depressing.
Yeah, that's kind of why I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it's good, but what the fuck? Yeah, she's the one who directs the handmaids and indoctrinates to the way of thinking. So she can be quite nasty. Yeah,
she was in the Leftovers as well. Interestingly, the series, and she was part of a cult in that as well.
Right.
So I kind of remember.
She does zealot very well.
Yes. Oh yes, she does. Cool. So so that's her. So we are introduced to her, as I said, and she. This is basically the same kind of self-help group that's set up for those that have lost someone. And we have Annie parked outside, but she chooses not to go in. But Joan appears at the door of her car, and gives her a bit of a sob story about losing her son and grandson, to kind of lure her in. This is the bait that she's luring to kind of go. I know your plight. I know how you're feeling. This is where also Annie goes back to Joan's house for the first time, and she notices that there's a doormat outside with Joni's name on it, and she kind of says, "Oh, my mother used to make ones like that." Okay, and that's the first kind of clue. That was what I was going to look up too. There's a bit early on. I'm backtracking, but there's a bit early on where Peter's at school, and he's talking, and the teacher's talking about Heracles and the myth behind Heracles, and something. And I don't know much about the Greek mythology enough, but there's something implied there where Heracles, stuff's happening around Heracles, and if he stopped to really look at what was going on, he'd be able to see stuff transpiring around him. And this is what the lecture is about. And this is essentially the core of what's happening with this family. If they actually kind of took a step back and took a look at the bigger picture, they go, oh, there's stuff that's foul at play. But they're so absorbed in their own worlds that they fail to see what's happening. And this is why this is a tragedy waiting to unfold because of that. And I thought that was actually quite a nice touch, and I was meant to look that up and see if that was actually born out of truth or not. But that's I found it interesting anyway that the lecturer was talking about that. So anyway, we're back at Annie's. And the other thing that I picked up at Annie's, sorry, not at Annie's, at Joni's. The other thing I picked up is that she's drinking this tea and she spits something out of her mouth and puts it, puts it down aside. And it's really unclear what it is, but I wondered if that was something that they were trying to use to kind of, some kind of drug to kind of put her under a little bit, or I don't know.
Okay.
I just thought it was a bit of it was there for a purpose.
Weird beat.
Yeah. So, because it really focuses on it, like you see her look at whatever it is, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Then we have there's a scene later following that where it's basically the dinner scene where the family's becoming even more unhinged, and this is where the fight kind of happens at dinner time.
Yeah.
And Peter basically just says, you just blame me. You just got to blame me, and Annie just unleashes.
Yeah.
And I always forget the husband's name, but the husband basically tells
Steve.
you. Yeah, Steve, thank you. He basically just says, all right, that's enough. Put a lid on it. Go. And she walks off.
Okay.
Then we see Jonah, right? This is the bit outside the store that I was talking about. So this is where Jonah is coincidentally there at the same time as Annie. And she talks about this medium who has presented her dead grandson to her. And Annie's a bit skeptical, but Joni convinces her to come back. And she basically kind of shows this instance where using a glass kind of, she's able to move the glass, and then we see the chalk kind of writing stuff out. I think it was like, I love you, grandma, or something like that. So she's leading, we're led to believe that it's the grandson here, but it's actually Paimon that's doing it, the devil. Not the devil, the demon. So it's him that's working this to kind of get Annie in a certain state of mind. That night, Annie has a nightmare about her son, and she sees his head kind of bashed in and eaten by ants. And it's like a dream within a dream, because she wakes up, she's actually still dreaming, and she goes and tries to tell Peter about that she wanted to miscarry, and did everything she could to try and not have him as a baby. And she's like, and he's like, why are you trying to kill me? And this is where she sets fire to him. And then she wakes up properly. And so this is basically her nightmares kind of are echoing her guilt, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
What, she's always kind of, and it's also implied that she's tried to do this before when sleepwalking in the past, where she tried to kill her kids. Like, she woke up, I think she mentions it to Joni, and she woke up basically doused in petrol, and doused her two kids in petrol, and literally what woke her up was the striking of the match. So there's a reason, like, why is she trying to do this? This is kind of argued why she has done this, but a theory is that subconsciously she knows that she needs to stop the demon from entering into our world. She needs to kill her kids before it happens. So, and then Annie goes, so then we cut to the next scene where Annie wakes up Peter and Stephen and basically tells her to come downstairs to kind of look at the next kind of conjuring trick, essentially, of Paimon. And she believes Charlie's spirit is in the house. And they kind of, Peter's willing to go along with it. Stephen's a bit reluctant. But then, presence is made, and, Paimon kind of uses his trickery to kind of convince the family. And then he takes over Annie at the very end of this, where Annie goes into a trance, essentially, as Charlie. So she talks as Charlie, and people question what's going on here. So the big thing to remember is, at this point, Paimon still has control of Charlie's spirit. He's inside Charlie's spirit, which is why he's able to kind of present himself as Charlie. And we hear the whole kind of, that knock sound she does with her mouth, that kind of
clicking.
Click. So every time we hear that, that's not Charlie's spirit. That's, well, it is, but it's Paimon inside Charlie's spirit. So whenever we hear that. So this is what's happening here. And the only way that Annie's broken out that trance is that Steve throws water over her face.
Yeah.
Then this next, so this is, I guess that's kind of like the midway part of the second act, because the next bit is where Annie finds the truth out about Joan. She goes to the house again because she starts getting a little bit suspicious of what's going on, and this is where she finds the stuff inside the house that is indicating that something's not as it should be. She goes back to her own house and she finds in the boxes all these kind of other kind of stuff about spiritualism. There's a book about Paimon in there as well, and in that are photos of Joan with her mum. So and this is where she goes, oh fuck, so something's really at play here. At the same time, she's at Peter's at school, and this is where he gets possessed for the first time. And he basically is at school, he's there, and he sees in his reflection, he sees himself smiling back at him, but this is actually Paimon entering his own body. And we see the same kind of lights that happened just before. And this is where he takes over him, and he basically smashes his head into the
desk, busting his nose.
Yeah. Just before that, in the lead up to that as well, we also see Joan outside of the school, and she basically shouts, "I expel you, Xanthony, Dagdany, Aparagon, Peter, get out." And this is basically her chant is making room for Paimon to enter Peter's body. I'm not really sure who the other names are, but I'm wondering if they're his guardians, and that's by saying that. Because in terms, you do have, we supposedly all have guardians. And maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. That's just my own theory. I that could be, take that with a grain of salt. It's not written anywhere that I read about. So then we cut back to Annie, who she starts to try and take control of the situation. She tries to burn Charlie's drawing book because she thinks that's the object which that the figure is trying to possess people. She tries to burn it in the fire, but her arm catches fire. So she has to retrieve the book. She then also goes up into the attic, and this is where she finds her mum's dead body in the corner, also decapitated. And we see the seal of Paimon drawn on the wall with blood. She starts to freak out. She goes downstairs, and then she tries to kind of tell the story to Stephen, who's returned home with Peter. From his point of view, from Stephen's point of view, he's basically seen Annie, who has lost her mind, her son, who's also losing his mind, and he's just trying to protect his son. So he puts Peter to bed, and in the meantime, he's just listening to what Annie's saying, and it's like, because to him, she's just ranting. And she's talking about the dead body up in the thing, and he goes up in the attic. He goes up, finds the dead body, comes back down. He's now thinking that she is the one that has dug up the body and stuck it up there.
Who put the body up there? Was it her?
The cult did, yeah.
Man.
And so then we kind of, she's trying to tell him about the book, and it needs to be burnt. And he can't, as she can't do it, because if she does, she'll burn, and she just can't go through that. She knows at this point she wants to sacrifice herself, but she hasn't got the conviction to throw the book in herself. So she's asking Peter to do it. He, at this point, says, "I've had enough. This is bullshit." So she just throws the book in anyway. At which point, Stephen bursts into flames.
I thought this was a bit of a cop out, a little bit.
But at this point, I agree with you. But at this point, from a story point of view, Steve has served his purpose. He's no longer relevant to what circumstances. Right. So they need to get rid of him somehow. So yes, it's a cop out, but that's how they choose to do it.
So for story, like I say, from a storytelling point of view, yes. But from a in-game point of view, it's a bit like the demons are changing the rules. So that's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. So, and at this point, this is when she's also taken over completely by Paimon at this point as well.
Yes.
With the shock, because as soon as she hits that shock of what's just happened, that's his window in. He goes, right, weakness, click, got you. Then we have Peter waking up, and he goes downstairs and he sees the burnt remains of his dad. In the background, we see we see the
nude man
crawling across the wall.
What?
We see the mum crawling across the wall in the background.
Is that later? Is that downstairs or is that later in his bedroom?
That's downstairs. Oh, so I missed the point. Upstairs, something happens, does it?
Does he wake up or something, and then you don't know? It's a weird wide shot from side on.
Yes.
And as he gets up, she moves, and you haven't noticed that she's been there the whole time or something.
Yeah,
it's
so
quite a good shot.
Yeah, that's right. That's
like she's scrambling around like fucking Regan from The Exorcist.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sorry, that's in the room that happens. That's right. And in the background, you see her crawl across the room. Then he goes down, finds the dead body of his dad, and it pans up, and she's up on the ceiling behind him.
Yeah.
He turns around and sees a naked dude in the doorway.
So again, and it's at this point you're like, you're making shit up, aren't you?
Yeah.
Why is it naked dude?
So this thing here, right? So the weird thing about this, and this could have probably been done in a better way, because he's lit in a way that's similar to the way that the ghost figure of Granny appeared earlier on. So you kind of think, is that a spirit that we're seeing?
Yeah.
But it's not. It's actually a person there. It's one of the cult members that's in the room, because he's there because they know that Paymon's about to enter the real world. So the cult are starting to form around. But from our point of view, it's a weird naked ghost in the door.
Yeah. All right, can you check on the kid? Is he there? Yeah. Why are you naked? Don't know.
This is Naked Wednesdays.
Barry, for the last time, you don't have to be naked during the possession ceremony. Yeah, but I can't. There's no rule that says you can't. Yeah, but maybe don't. You know, it's just fucking weird, bro.
One time we can make a sacrificial. And you're saying I can't be naked?
Yeah, we're up trying to bring the devil into the world, but do you have to make it fucking weird?
But Barbara's naked.
Barbara's naked. Yeah, well, look, yeah, that's different. It's Barbara, okay?
And Steve.
Steve. Yeah, well, I didn't know Steve, but still, dude.
Yeah. But anyway, naked dude in the doorway. And this is where he freaks out. Mum jumps down, I think, to try and attack him. He runs away, climbs up the attic for some reason, closes the door. She comes along and then starts bashing her head against the door of the attic. This is the scene you often saw in the trailer, that snippet of that kind of real fast, kind of crazed, manic thing. Cool shot, but yeah. So he's up in the attic. This is where he finds that the body is no longer there of Grandma, but the silhouette is still there. We can see the dust forming still around there. Candles are lit. The blood patterns on the wall. He turns around and sees loads of naked people around near him. And I think he then looks up and he sees Mum hovering in the sky, trying to decapitate herself.
Yeah, with piano wire. Going.
He freaks out, jumps out the window, down, knocks himself unconscious on the ground. At that point, we also hear the sound effect of Annie's head hitting the ground, where she's fully completed task of decapitating herself. And so she's no longer of requirements. And at this point, Paimon has taken control of Peter because Peter's unconscious, and wakes up, sees decapitated Mum floating up into that outside kind of treehouse thing that was used as a bit of a retreat at points. He goes up inside, and there's a bunch of naked people, and other people kind of bowed down in front of this kind of figure or statue with a crown on its head. And there's also a framed picture of Grandma saying Queen Lee. And this is where it's indicating that she'd been married to the demon, essentially. So she'd given herself in marriage to him.
Isn't Charlie severed head under the crown?
It's not Charlie. It's not Charlie. I don't know. I don't know about that, but I know that there are two decapitated bodies in front of her.
Yes. In
front of the statue. One is Grandma, one is Mum.
Yep.
And on that note, so this is where I will just navigate quickly away to see my notes, because where was that? Where have I written that? Apparently, Paimon is seen earlier on in the book, where the picture of him on a camel or a horse or something, and next to him is a bag, and it's got 3 severed heads in there. So obviously the heads being Grandma, Charlie, and Annie. So he's got the 3 heads that he needs to then kind of enter the world. Good and proper, yes. And so basically, so then Joan kind of comes up, so she's there, and she basically comes to him and says to him, Charlie, so he's addressing Charlie, so obviously, again, going back to what I said, so Paimon at this point isn't manifested yet, he's about to become manifested, he's still in the spirit of Charlie, who is now possessing Peter. So she says, Charlie, you're all right now. You are Paimon, one of the 8 kings of hell. We have looked to the northwest and called you in. We've corrected your first female body and give you now this healthy male host, so it needs to be a male host for some reason. We reject the Trinity and pray devoutly to you, great Paimon. Give us your knowledge of all secret things. Bring us honor, wealth, and good familiars. Bind all men to our will, as we have bound ourselves for now and ever to yours, Hail Paimon. And at this point is where Paimon enters the world proper, and this is where the credits roll.
So it was supposed to be, in Charlie. He's been possessing Charlie from the beginning. Yeah. But there's supposed to be Peter. Again, explains why Toni Collette tried to kill Peter in childbirth.
Yeah, because it always needed to be a male host. And this goes back to Annie, Toni Collette's character, her brother, who committed suicide, because that's what his grandma was trying to do to him, was trying to get Paimon inside his body to resurrect Paimon. And he killed himself to stop it from happening.
Oh, the brother, the husband, or the
brother. So
Toni Collette's brother, right. Yeah.
And it's indicated that Granddad, who we never see, starved himself because he didn't want to be a part of it anymore, and just kind of trying to stop things from happening too. Yeah, there you go. End of the movie. Right, yeah. So I guess, when did you watch this one with me or no?
No, I watched it with the missus years later.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't see it when it first came out.
No. All right. So, what was your first reaction from when you first watched this movie?
Yeah, I was like, I could see both. I remember hearing people loving it, and then the people who did see it was like, I think it was interesting that you said that it had come out quite a while here later, which doesn't normally happen now anymore. And I think a lot of Australians who are into horror films watched it were hit by overhype. Because I remember Ben Skinner being a bit, and you're a bit, I'm a bit, because we expected the next Shining. Having said that, when I first saw The Shining, I was like, and so, because I think any film can be it's easy once a film is hyped. It can very easily be overhyped. Yes. Having said that, I did see it quite a while after everybody else, so I was prepared to be okay, blank slate, let's see what it is.
Yeah.
And then it starts off, and then you realise it's a bit slow, it's a bit paced out, and all these amazing hints that you've talked about.
Yeah.
I guess if you space them out enough, you start to lose. You lose focus. You forget. Oh yeah, that symbol was that, and that bit where she's allergic. She's allergic to nuts. I forgot about that. The precursor to that. Oh yeah, that symbol was on the telegraph pole. Well, yeah. So for me, all this amazing stuff that's interconnected, because it is so spaced out and so drawn out, and caught up in so much melodrama and angst, you can get distracted quite easily.
Yeah. It's a fairly lengthy movie for horror films. The substantial being an hour and a half. This is close to 2 hours 10 minutes. Yeah. So it's on the longer side, and by not overly long by any stretch, but I'm just talking generally. They try and make films an hour and a half long. So anything that stretches up beyond 2 hours, it's going to have a bit of meat to it. the meat is well served in it. I remember like my reaction coming out of it. I wasn't scared. I thought the ending was overblown and far fetched, and but I remember distinctly thinking really cool cinematography, and it was beautifully shot, really nicely. The framework in it was really, really nicely put together. So
who's messaging you?
Miles. It's because I sent him a message earlier, and I'll explain in a second. So I kind of came out with it thinking this movie definitely isn't as good as people are making it out to be. But like I said, when I watched it again, I just was like, oh, actually, it's a bit better. It's still not great, but I think it's better. I think I put it as like, I probably would have given it maybe a 6 out of 10 when I watched it. But this time round, I went, oh no, it's better than that. It's probably an 8 out of 10. It's a well-crafted movie.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's well put together, and obviously it's made by an auteur.
Yeah, and people who haven't seen Midsummer, fucking watch it. It's good.
Yeah, right.
And a lot better. But yeah, so there we go.
It's not genius. And you know me, I'm more about the writing side of it. I'm more about how you're telling because I think too, it's like at the end of the day, it's a witch coven possession of a child story.
Yeah.
So there's nothing. Not that it's easy to do, but there's nothing new, nothing insightful, nothing super twisty, nothing really amazing. You could tell it as a episode of 1 hour Netflix episode of a horror anthology. You could condense all that down.
Yeah.
So for that, and so because I'm big about the writing, so I'm a bit like, and because cinematography is great, and if you love all that, then yes, it's a genius film, and directing and acting, yes, genius film. But for me, because I'm all about the writing and what the idea is behind it, I'm a bit like, it's a bit, and that's the thing too, I guess. Whenever you have, particularly horror, if it crosses over into mainstream and gets awards and plaudits, it tends to be thin on the ideas and because we've seen a lot of horror films, so it takes a lot. Okay, that's different. That's genius. That's great. But what it's sick on is great performances, great cinematography, great direction.
Absolutely.
So
it relies on the smoke and mirrors, really, essentially.
Yeah.
So like, and I agree with you, Ant. I actually agree with you 100%, and that's why it loses those couple of marks because the scripting isn't as solid as it could have been. And I still fall back on that when I've watched it again. I still come back going, it's not quite there. It's not a masterful movie. It's just a very well presented one. So, cool, man. Well, I think on that note, we will bow out of the podcast, and we've given our views and dissected and discussed Hereditary, which you guys voted for Best Horror Film 2018. Do stick around for the final of these polls that we're doing for this current year, 2019. We're already into December. We're fast looking at the end of the year. So start thinking about those movies that kind of impacted on you, because in a couple of weeks' time, we'll put out our vote for the Best of Horror 2019. Until then, I'm your lead host, as always, Saul Muerte, and I was joined by Anthony, the Big Cheese Yee. Goodbye.
See you, mate.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.